Well, here we are, guys. Welcome. We are looking at the Fanatec CSL-Elite wheelbase and the P1 wheel. Just starting out, just to kind of go over this, I have put at least 1,000 hours in, if not closer to 1,200, since purchasing this a little over a year ago. So it's a pretty long-term review for something that is really an economy package from Fanatec. I have some opinions on it that I really wish they would have stuck with this faceplate theme a little better. As you can see in the light, it is actually it really looks good. You don't really see it very much when you have a wheel on, as you'll see later. But we're going to start out with the basics here. I'm basically just going to turn it on for anybody looking to go up to, say, the G20 from the G27 to, this, or if you're looking at other options. This is going to be a real shocker for you, but we're just going to turn it on here. The fan LEDs are going to That's it, guys. That's all the noise it makes. I can literally just... It's really stiff right now because I don't have a wheel attached and it doesn't know what settings I'm trying to use. But you get the idea. It is it's pretty much completely silent, within reason. Now, one thing with this lighting I have going on here, it's either too bright or too dark, but you can't really see the fan LEDs all that well. A lot of people complain because you'll notice I have some screws in here. I've used different ones. I actually do have the original screw that comes in a lot. I've seen some original reviews here. People were afraid of losing this. I've dropped it countless times, and I do not have the cleanest of areas that I sim race in, but I still have it. Problem is, I don't know how well you can see this, but there we go. If you see, it's trying to focus here, the end of that screw is coned a bit. It's conical, and I'm going to try and get this. Yeah, there we go. That's better. And you'll see the threads there are really wore at the edge. That's because when you go to put a wheel on, using the original screw, and I'm going to do this real quick. This is what I am using currently. This is the screw I got for mounting random Fanatec stuff. I've got Fanatec everything. This is what I'm using now. Get that into focus. And you can see there's a little bit of a weird tread wear pattern here. Sorry. Still focusing. And if I put the original next to it, here we have the two screws lined up, and one is, sorry, I'm trying to hold this as best I can here. One is much longer than the other. By much, it's not much, but it is noticeably longer, and there's no conical shape to the end of the screw, and that is what really helps start it. But the problem you run into with this wheelbase is, and this is my problem with the P1 wheel, this is my primary concern, and the reason I don't recommend using any of the, what do they call it? They call it a simplified quick release. Don't recommend using the simplified quick release for this reason. I'm going to put this back, for now anyway. Couple turns to hold it in there. I have different types of screws sitting here, but this is the original one. I'm going to put it back as well. And I'm actually going to turn this off. And now I can actually really yank on that, and it's not going anywhere. It's I have it secured with 3 bolts, the 3-bolt pattern Fanatec uses, and I don't mind it at all. It works really well. You've only got one towards the back of the base and two in the middle. Now, I have taken this thing apart. It was past its 1 year, so I figured, you know, it was squeaking a bit. I don't have videos of that, unfortunately, but it wasn't anything terrible. It's just that when I turned the wheel really fast, it would squeak quite annoyingly loud, and I was actually unable to record during that time because it was so loud. But I took off the faceplate. Basically, I'm going to use this as my fingers are not really good references for this. But you just take out these four along the sides, these two here, and then I think there's 2 or 4 on the bottom, like around on the bottom. Of course, I had to take this off of the desk here. And I keep these hex wrenches on my desk at all times, because if I ever want to remove the wheel, now I do just have the P1 wheel at this moment, and that's all I've been using. So the P1 wheel has just as much uses as the wheelbase, and it has been taken on and off many times, because I do not like the idea of people, you know, coming through the area, or just friends, or who, you know, I have kids that will use my simulator just for, you know, fun, and I don't like the idea of people using it to transfer their weight to this shaft. That's if you have a wheel attached and they're pulling and tugging on that, they could break it. So now I have taken this apart, as I was saying, and the 3-hole pattern actually goes right into, I'm sorry if I'm shaking the camera a bit there, it goes right into basically a really thick, really well made steel plate. There's a steel plate, goes flat, and then it comes up, and then it goes up around this whole unit here. Not on the front, not like right here behind the faceplate, but it's about midway back. It's just steel, flat this way, and there's flat on the bottom. That's what you mount to your desk, is or your stand or rig, whatever. I've got kind of a combination of things going on here. This is not a desk or a stand. It's something homemade I made. We'll get into that maybe in another video, but it is pretty well made on the inside. A lot more well made than the G27. I do have pictures of the inside where I took it apart, and I'll probably show you, you know, what I did in essence to fix the squeakiness. It was just where the belt, where one of the pulleys had needed greasing, and factory grease just didn't last. So I put some lithium grease on it, and it's just as good as new as I was showing. No noise whatsoever. I'm actually going to attach my P1 wheel now. And it just kind of slides on. You have to line up one bit, turn it upside down. You can't see this, but actually I should be able to turn it. I'm going to take this out. And the problem is, you have this, hang on, I'll pull this back off here and show you. Sorry, wrong side. This is what the simplified QR is, and what happens is, when you put it on, that's pretty thick. Pretty thick plastic. Don't mess with these pins, don't bend those are very important. But this is very thick, and thick there. So you can see, this is not the factory screw, this is the one I've been using, and that would be all the way down pretty much. So that's probably a little bit too deep, but you know, what was happening is, the threads, I'm about to yank my lighting down here. Look at that. You can't get the thread started because of that conical piece. So you end up getting you end up putting a lot of pressure in, getting it to there, and then you got like 3 threads, and it ends up wearing out the actual bottom side where this goes in, because you can see I'm actually putting the screw in a pretty good ways, and it started there. So you can imagine, you know, there's not a whole lot of play there. So I do not use the factory screw. I have not lost it, but I just don't use it. It just it's too short, and it has that conical thing going on there. So I'm gonna put this on upside down now, since I have it all rotated around funny. And so now that we have that out, I'm gonna take this screw all the way down over here. Actually put it in here. I'm not going to tighten it super tight or anything. We're not going to do anything intensive, just to show how quiet this is. Sorry, it's taking a moment here. Okay, so there we're at center. I'm going to turn it on again here. Or I thought it was the center, apparently not. And that's it. It'll run through its little spill there, and you're done. And no noise. And I can actually change this over. That's the highest drift setting, and that's hands-free there. It's just no friction there at all. So turn that back down because I don't want to mess with my settings there. One thing I did run into also with the P1 wheel itself is this button right here started sticking. And I just basically took some spray can lubricant, sprayed the face plate, went ahead and cleaned this off. And cleaned all the buttons while I was at it. And it works fine now. Of course, I've dusted everything, cleaned everything. Now, my big complaint here with this wheel is this rubber is hard. It is grippy because it's got this like texture feel to it. But in itself, I'm actually going to pull the camera back so we can get a better look here. But it's not the best. It is a little bit soft. Like I feel like it gives a little bit right here where my hand usually goes. Now I wear gloves when I race, but it's a little cheap. And my least favorite part of the entire wheel is actually the Revled stripe. If I can get that in focus here, the stripe at the top lights up. This stripe here lights up, changes color, and then you have like a display here. Now, I don't know if video does it justice, but it really does look cheap. It feels cheap and it looks cheap. That's really the biggest complaints. That and the button layout isn't the most intuitive. I hit this all the time on accident. I wear gloves, and these buttons are really small for gloves. And there's three right here really close together, and you don't want to hit this one in the middle of the race or anything, because that changes your settings, as you can see here. I'm gonna lean this back again, and yeah, it's got my settings up at the top here. So you don't want to hit that in the race and bring up your settings. It's not good. So that's my big complaint. Another one is there is no funky switch. You just use the, it's not an analog stick, it is a D-pad. It's a 4-way with a click D-pad. And then it's got 4 buttons around it. So there's a lot over here, and a lot over here. Nothing, well, there's actually these 3 really close together that they could have spaced out in the middle. And then this one that is hard to reach. Now the paddle shifters, nothing really to brag about. They're a little stiffer than, say, a G27 or something entry level, which this is entry level, but they're about the same, more or less. I don't have any problems with them. They haven't wore out. They still work just fine. There's nothing really special there. Now this wheel is pretty much all plastic except for this metal faceplate and metal screws here, and everything else is pretty much this rubber and plastic mix. So the plastic is pretty high construction and has a pretty good look to it. Looks durable. It is durable. Now the tube that actually goes onto the back, it flexes. It has little slits in it to flex. That's fine. It's supposed to do that. But this up here, I'm having to tilt this up again here, but this up here it doesn't look as good as the rest of the wheel. It just looks cheap, and it actually feels cheap. I can actually move that around a little bit. You can't really see it, but I can move it a little bit. When I touch it, it moves back and forth. It makes me think I broke it. And I don't mistreat it at all. When it's not on the wheel, I actually still have the foam cutouts, and I just pop these on it. And that's how I store it, is with the foam. And I even have the bag laying around here somewhere that it came in. But, you know, I actually take pretty good care of this, and that's just my only major flaw with this. For the price, it was $89.95, $89.99. It was about $90 for this actual rim, and the wheelbase itself, I really don't remember what I got it for. It was on a special. So, I want to say it was around $300. I could be wrong there. Like I said, it was on special. At the time, it was a Christmas time when my G27 started having issues, so I just went ahead and got this. But it is, for the price, you really just can't beat it. It is a 1080 degree wheel, which I think is a necessity, really. Why would you not have 1080 degrees on a wheel this day and age? Because there's so many games like Truck Simulator, ATS and ETS2, and then there's car, like driving simulators, just the city car driver. Real cars are usually 1080, or I've even seen more degrees in the wheel rotation, so I don't understand why they would go with less. But this is now my current setting. I'm going to change it here to go to automatic mode, but that is one turn and a half. Now it doesn't go all the way to a half because it has a soft bumper that you can push through it if you really want, but I wouldn't advise doing that. And goes back the other way the same amount. Now, of course, the cool thing is when you're using just 900 degrees, it goes a full turn and all the way to 900 degrees. It goes all the way before it hits a soft bumper. So that is actually a true 900, and that's really cool because G27s and CSWs, they do not actually have a full 900. It's like 898. There's a couple degrees missing that it doesn't have. Actually, the G27 I calibrated it to 388 because, or I'm sorry, 888, or even less because of the bumper, the soft bump that it had was so great, and it just didn't use all the wheel. So that's a plus. If you are just looking for a 900 degree wheel, this is a true 900 degrees. It is, not going to mess with you in any way. Now at first I set it a little less than 900 because I wasn't sure, but then I noticed the wheel was not matching up to in game, and I went ahead and just changed it to the true 900, and it's worked great ever since. Now I usually do use all the buttons on here. They're, like I said, they're not the most intuitive, but they do work. And same thing for the shifter paddles. I have an SQ shifter that I prefer in cars that use them, but I do use the shifters in cars that use those, and that works fine. There's nothing special, but there's nothing wrong with them either. Yeah, it is nice to have a button layout, pretty much the same on the right hand side as an Xbox controller, more or less. You got a couple buttons that make up for the triggers and stuff like that, but it is nice to have that for games that are console oriented. Now, I do not have a console to plug it into and don't run it in PlayStation or Xbox One mode, but it does work, and I've switched it over to that mode to test it, and it works. But it is nice to have that layout to be like that for games that are console oriented. Other than that, we'll get into the pros and cons. Like I said, the wheelbase has held up. I'm actually going to turn this off again and remove, and then with it off, there's no friction here either. There's just smoothness. But we'll get into what makes it tick when I deconstructed it and made some quick repairs. Show you how to do that, and we'll take another look. I really do like that faceplate. It looks brilliant in light, and you can see that. I just wish that they had kind of went with that along the sides and top, as they're different. The sides are shiny, the top is matte with two-tone going on. This I can't, in the video you probably can't see, this is like a silver and this is like a dark gray or black. And then the side piece here is like a fake carbon black. It's shiny. So too much going on for me, but the complaints that I've seen, losing the screw, it's not a big deal. I have not lost it, and I'm pretty awful about stuff like that. And I have a really, there it goes, untidy, get that later. I have a really untidy place that I sim race in, and I haven't lost it, so I don't know what people's deal is, but that's pretty much my take. We'll get into the insides and the feedback, all that good stuff, but I just wanted to give an overview real quick to start this video out. Okay guys, getting into what makes this thing really tick, and to know what to do when you maintain if you're having a little bit of an issue with your Fanatec CSL-Elite wheelbase. Now, I have been using the P1 wheel for 1,000+ hours and came across a squeaking noise. To best explain it, it was what I would call a bark. If you have a lawnmower and your belt has been slipping on your blade, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the same kind of deal. It's got most older lawnmowers have a single belt drive that makes the belt spin, or makes the blade spin. And that's essentially how this works. Is it has one belt in it. Now, I don't know if the dual belt that the CSW has, the CSW 1, 2, and 2.5, I don't know if they are better or worse. I don't know what the difference would be if they just have more torque because they have two belts. But anyway, we're going to get into this too. Now, I'm going to kick off by saying the lubricants I used were plastic-friendly lubricants. I used lithium grease and a silica spray, silicone-based spray. I actually used liquid wrench is what I used, and it is safe for plastics. So don't use WD-40. Don't use oil-based grease. Use some sort of clean grease. Lithium grease is actually what they ship with about everything you buy that's Fanatec. So if you've ordered their pedals or their brake kit or really anything like that, then you'll have some sitting around. If you don't have any sitting around, you could probably buy it for pretty cheap. But the first step really to get this thing apart is to take off these 4 screws. I have it pictured here. Not the greatest of pictures because it's hard to do that while you're working, and I would have done a video. I could still do a video, but I really don't feel like taking it apart again. You take something apart so many times, you end up messing up something. So you take apart these 4 screws around the 4 corners of the base plate. The next thing you'll do is go to the bottom. So you have to take this thing off of its whatever it's mounted to. The bottom, you'll see 4 holes or grooves, and there's some Phillips head screws. Now the last ones were Phillips as well. These are just Phillips head screws. You'll take them out, and you will then go back to the front, and you'll see these 2 holes. They really just look like holes in the faceplate, and you gotta have a really long, skinny hex bit to get in there and get it out. I do not remember the size of the hex. I think it was a 5mm, but you'll go in there and take it out. The next step is pretty much to remove all the plastic bits, and you'll see pretty much as you take the top off, you'll see pretty much the innards. Now once you take the other two screws off, you'll see the front, and it basically has one big disc on the front with a sensor on it that reads your rotation. You don't want to mess with that. Your big metal gear or cog with the belt going around it. Two white, I guess tensioner is what you'll call them, tensioner pulleys, even though there's really not any tension going on. And then the black force feedback motor. Pretty sure that's the force feedback motor over there. Or actually that's the force feedback motor is the small gear. And the two pulleys was what was squeaking for me. So I took them off. The factory grease had just gone. They were really gunky on the inside. So I just take the C-clips off the end of the pin, and the pulleys come right off. I just took them off, washed them with good old soap and water, and got all the gunk out. They were pretty nasty, to be honest. After 1,000+ hours, I'm not sure if it was belt particles or what it was that was dirty, but I basically did the reverse order. Put some lithium grease on the inside, put some lithium grease on the end on the pin itself, and put it back together in reverse order, and that's pretty much fixed it ever since. So haven't had any issues. Yeah, it's not too bad. Not a hard job at all. I've taken apart the G27, and I can vouch that it's nowhere near as well made as the interior. Just looking at the top, seeing that giant metal cog with the real belt on it that looks like it came off of a lawnmower, and seeing, that huge just feedback drive engine with the metal fins, cooling fins on it, and then of course your sensor in the middle with all the feedback, and I don't know how all of that works, but pretty much it's just really well made on the inside. You may look at it and be like, oh, it's all plastic, but trust me, take apart something like a G27 and you'll be like, wow, this is a lot better made. Those big, it really is just slabs of metal on the inside that hold the thing together, and that's actually what you mount to. So it's really well made, and it's not a bad job at all if you have the right tools to break it down and do your maintenance. So that's pretty much it. Now here we are for our force feedback testing, and on our outlap here I'm going to explain why I chose the car and track that we did. I did choose Watkins Glen. It has the high-speed S's coming out of pits here, and so you're going to get your high-speed, high-load transient maneuvers. You're going to get that really high to one side, then high to the other, and then you're going to get that loose feeling in the middle, and the high pressure to the other side. So you're going to get a lot of pressures, and then that real funny, almost like wiggle in the middle, and then high pressures again. It's a high-speed transient maneuver, which is very fun. And then you have the bus stop, which is a low speed. You're going to be testing your suspension, stuff like that. In a real car, you'll be testing your low speed, your actual bump and shock in your wheel. Then you have the very long carousel, followed by another kind of middle speed corner. And the carousel's that high load downforce type corner, so it gives you that maximum load so you know what your force feedback's capable of. I can usually do a couple laps here and know what I'm getting force feedback wise to know what adjustments to make and clipping, etc. In fact, while making this video I actually had to adjust because this is a car that I did not know or have not driven a whole lot with this wheel. So I had to adjust the clipping to get it where I wanted. It is the Porsche GT3 Cup car. And the reason I picked it is it does have downforce and it does have aero, but it's also pretty much mechanical grip. And this wheel actually did really well. Now, because the lightweight, because it is a very lightweight wheel itself, it's really has the feedback there. Now, sometimes I feel it's a little bit jerky. Some people like that, but I've been around cars and raced cars and been around them my whole life, and they don't jerk you around. There's not any fine movement, if you say. Now, there is some fine movement. You feel things in the wheel, but it's not what people, you know, what people think it is. Like in force feedback terms, you feel the power steering is what you feel, and you feel kind of a vibration. A vibration's hard to mimic in a wheel, but it actually does pretty good at it. As you can see, it jerked me around pretty good around this track, and I apologize. There's sections that I'm, driving the camera is not at the best angle, and ended up blocking the view. But you get the idea. It does really well. The force feedback's there, and it does tell me what's going on. It makes the game enjoyable, and that's what I actually did when I upgraded to Fanatec. I wanted that. I always questioned, what does a belt-driven wheel feel like, and why is everybody making a big deal out of it? I got it, and about as soon as I got it, everybody started going to direct drive. So now that's my next adventure. I will say, if you're coming from a G27, your arms are in for a workout. It took me probably 2 months of driving this wheel to get to the point where I could do endurance races again. I had to build up my arm strength to get used to the strength. And you have to remember, when it was new, I was abusing the crap out of it. I had those force feedback way too high, but I've made it. I made adjustments to get it where it should be, where the clipping's right. And I actually did the Daytona 500 last year. If you know anything about that race, it's a lot of left turns, holding the wheel left, a lot of high strain on the suspension, so you get a lot of pull and tug, lots of bumps. So I did the Daytona 500, Daytona 24 hour in this wheel. I did Daytona 24 hour this year in this wheel. I did the Sebring. No, I didn't do Sebring. I did do the 24 hours of Spa, or the 12 hour. I can't remember which it was, but I did Spa in it. I've done lots of endurance races since I first put it on my rig, and it is really well. You do not feel any fade. I have not overheated. I actually have my settings at 120 force, which is not what they recommend. They do not recommend you go past 100%, because then you're telling it to actually amplify the force feedback signal. That's fine though. It does not fade. There's no fading. And the big thing for me was there is no pull. And what I mean by that is I've done a lot of oval racing on it, a lot more than I have road, and it does not have that almost trademark pull to one side like some other wheelbases will have. Usually your helical gearing wheelbases will pull stronger to the right, or pull stronger. Trying to think of, they'll pull stronger one way than the other because of all the left turning you did on oval, and you don't do much right turning in oval. If you're turning right, you're doing something wrong in oval. I think that's in a movie somewhere. But anyway, so that was the big thing. The fan lids do work. They do their job, and the display does its job. But it looks way better when working than it does when it's not. It looks kind of cheap and crappy when it's not on and working, whereas when it's on and blinking and lighting up, it actually looks pretty good. So there is that kind of benefit to it. But I'm still not a fan of having it displayed at the top of my wheel. It's a little unusual. I realized it was kind of their test run to see if people liked it. I do like it. It's different. No one else really does that. So it's, it's nice. And where the Fanatec are on the CSL-Elite wheelbase, it is undoubtedly realistic because it's almost like it's right there on your dash. Um, Now, you'll see the screen moving. That's actually my head moving up. Use track IR. So it is moving around the screen, so it's not lining up. But, if I was running triples or something like that, you could, almost do away with your on-screen stuff and just use your Fanatec. They are bright and they work. If you have the program, Fanatec, it pretty much, you can just tell it to install the game and you have it. And you can see me actually struggling through a turn. It's very bumpy coming around the boot tip, I guess is that what you'd call that, the end of the boot, the sharp as the hairpin. So I struggled with that quite a lot in this testing session because it like I said, I wanted to test that bumpiness in the wheel, and it was a car I wasn't super familiar with. That's why I do know the course pretty well, but I always race in like GT or Formula. I rarely race anything mechanically grippy around the track, so it's a little bit different. But it has really smooth sensations, very strong to one side or the other, and there is no complaints in the force feedback department for me. Like I said, I have not tried a direct drive or even the CSW wheel, so I have no idea how those are like. But I will tell you, it is a huge leap forward from a G27 or something similar, G29 even. My sibling has a G29 or a G920, which is the PC version of the G29, and it is about the same as the G27, and then G27 is not far off from the G25, so it is a huge leap forward there. You're going to have much stronger and much more refined force feedback, as well as smooth. The smoothness is unparalleled compared to the helical gearing, where you can feel the gears on the inside move. You can't feel any of that. Like I said, at about 180 degrees, you can feel you can feel a little bit of grab in the belt, maybe, but it's just a friction. You feel a little bit of friction, but when you're racing, you don't notice that at all. Only when you're, goofing around with it, not turned on or something like that. So there's your kind of force feedback overview. I am running a bit longer than I wanted to on this review, but that's pretty much summed it up. We'll get to the end and basically just cover everything again. Alright guys, here you have it. Kind of the final thoughts here. We're going to do the pros and cons pretty much a little bit differently than I expected to do. I was just going to put a picture up and kind of go over pros, cons, all that good stuff. But I kind of wanted to show what I was talking about when I mentioned it. Now, for me, the pros are that it is that belt drive. It's very smooth, very quick, very strong force feedback at this price point. I think the price point for what you're getting force feedback wise is definitely worth it. So that's more for the wheelbase itself. This review is kind of just for both. Together, they came together as a package. They're advertised together as a package. that's more of a wheelbase thing. One of the pros about the wheel is it is completely Xbox One, and it is actually PlayStation compatible. So it's nice to have all the console layout with the wheel right out of the box. Most wheels cannot offer that. You're not going to see Thrustmaster that's Xbox and PlayStation compatible out of the box. This one is. Now, that was due to some firmware changes when I first got this. I don't think it could do both. I think it was only Xbox One with this wheel rim, and then you had to get another wheel rim to be PlayStation. But I'm pretty certain, and somebody might have to check on this, because I do not have a PlayStation. Pretty sure that with the firmware update, this wheel rim is compatible with both, as well as PC, obviously. Now, another pro about this wheel rim is that it does have a digital display up top, and my camera's not focused on it here, but up here at the top it does have a display. And it has the rev stripe. Now, my opinion on the rev stripe, I actually don't really have an opinion on it. It's neat in its own way, but it's kind of the way it's constructed is janky. To me, it seems a little cheap looking. And same thing for the plastic here. The camera doesn't really do justice for anything. You can't really see how scratched up that is, but I'm really easy on my equipment, and it's really scratched up. Like, not big scratches, but little, like dirt scratches. And I don't know how. So it just tells me that it's like a cheaper plastic. But when it's working, it looks great. The wheel rim itself does have this metal faceplate, which really makes the whole thing look way better than it could be. If this was plastic, it would be one of the cons. This whole wheel rim would be one giant con. Another issue, taking this off here, the simplified quick release. That's a no for me. I'm not a fan of this. Okay, it works, but I'm using a screw that's probably going too far into the shaft here, into the hole, like it's on the bottom here, because the original one doesn't work. And then there is, of course, the very mushy paddles here. That's definitely a con. There's no positive click at all with that. I know where it's shifting, but that's only because I've used it. Otherwise you wouldn't know. And another con really is this hard rubber. It really has no give to it at all. Now, like I said, it is grippy, and it actually, once it gets warm from your heat, or if you're wearing gloves, obviously that's not gonna work. But once you get some heat on this, it gets a little sticky in a good way, not a bad way. And it's got some grip to it, but it's definitely not comfortable, and it doesn't feel real. So we're gonna take this off again. Actually, one other con I want to mention: this does not have a funky switch. This is a D-pad, and it does click. That's all you get. This is just a button. On all the other wheels, Fanatec has the Xbox button as an encoder. So that's a big fault, is there's no encoder. It's just an Xbox button that really doesn't, it's just a button. I use it as a horn in some games. I use it to scroll through my boxes in high racing. But there is no encoder. There's just a D-pad. So that's a big fault to have with this wheel. Every other wheel rim, as far as I know, has an encoder, other than these P1 wheels. Now the P1 and the P1 Pro, or whatever they're calling it, the P1 Elite, I'm not sure if it does. But every other wheel, whether it be the BMW, the Formula, the new GT3 wheel, every wheel that Fanatec's made, other than this kind of setup, other than the P1, does not have or does have an encoder and doesn't have this weird thumbstick and button. They actually have they have thumbstick with a D-pad and an encoder. Usually this is an analog stick though, and then the encoder's on the other side that has the knob that twists. My reference there would be, I do have the BMW wheel now in my possession, so that's kind of what I'm referencing there, and most of their other wheels look about the same. So with the hub, you can customize where it is, so that's an exception to that rule. But all their pre-made wheels that is not customizable in their configuration, they're pretty much thumbstick, D-pad, and encoder on the other side, or what they call funky switch, which I kind of like that. It's catchy and it works, and that's what it really is. It's really weird when you are using it, you're like, this is funky. So that's why they named it that. I have not taken these out. I don't know what's under there, but it does look good, even though I don't know what it's really for. Why you need 5 bolts holding on a metal plate, I do not know. But it looks good. So now when we take this off, this is a pro for me. Sorry, I got a storage pin sitting there. The look of this faceplate is awesome, and the fact I can take any wheel and pop it on here is awesome. In fact, I may just do that here in a minute to just show you. It's still, in fact, I feel this wheelbase actually feels better with a heavier wheel. This wheel is extremely light. It's no mass to it whatsoever, which is nice. You really feel the force feedback with it. But again, as I mentioned in the force feedback video, it's not necessarily like that in real life. You do feel a little bit of tug and pull. Feel a little bit of tug and pull from your hydraulics and stuff like that dampens that feeling. So you still feel it, but you can tell it's dampened. And that really is how you distinguish from breaking loose to being loose. You want to be loose, because even on road course racing, being looser is faster, but you don't want to be broke loose. You want to be in control. And when in a real car, you feel that hydraulic pushback and that hydraulic feel, and you can tell the difference between them because of that. And so, although you can tell it with this wheel rim attached and that's lightweight and everything, sometimes it becomes a little bit harder to distinguish. Now, some have described that as watery. I wouldn't describe it as watery. I'd describe it as a little too choppy. And but that's just my take on it. But other than that, your force feedback, the fact that it can be choppy is actually a good thing, because that means the force feedback's strong enough to, give you that choppiness, which is great when you do break loose, because you can feel it immediately. So the cons to the wheelbase are the price point for a wheelbase and wheel that do not come with pedals is a tad pricey. Now, as I've said, I'm actually going to let it go through its startup procedure here, and I'm actually going to dim the light here so you can see the fan LEDs here and how they work. And I'll even run it through its testing here, and you can actually hear the engine to it cranking it up a bit. Okay, so there's your rev LEDs on the wheelbase. Here's your rev stripe, and there's your display test that it will run. And like I said, that display actually looks really good when it's working, and with the rev LEDs it's even better, as you can see in the force feedback video I did. It actually does look and work really well, so that's a plus. And it is a bit noisy right now. The weird thing I have noticed about this wheelbase, do want to mention this, and this is not a con, but it is kind of one of those weird quirks that you might want to know about, is This room is a little cool this evening. I do not have any heat going in it, and this is February, so it's a little cool in here. And the wheelbase apparently does detect temperature difference from where it's optimal, where it works optimally. So apparently, if it is below the optimal temperature, the fan runs. And apparently if it is above that optimal temperature, the fan runs. But it doesn't know that it's too cold. It just runs the fan. Which is weird to me, because the fan's keeping it cooler, but it's too cold for the optimal temperature. Or I guess they may not just have it programmed for cool temperatures. Whatever may be the reason there, the fan runs when I boot it up if it's a little cool in the room. And that's strange to me. So it's great that the fan runs and knows when to run, and I've never had a problem with it whatsoever. It's not very loud. You can hear it now. That's it running. But it's when you're in game, you don't hear it ever. Even when I'm running speakers, I don't hear it. And it is running at 100%. This is as loud as it runs. So moving on to the wheelbase again, that is another con, is that it doesn't come with any peripherals. You're paying essentially $400 for a wheel rim and a wheelbase, and that's it. If you do have pedals, that's great. If you don't, I guess it could be considered a pro because it gives you an incentive to buy V3s, and V3s are, in my opinion, right now, they're pretty much the top of the entry level. I think that if you're coming into sim racing and you're wanting to take a pretty good jump into it, then V3s are your answer. They're not super expensive like Hosingveld or some kind of custom works. They're not $1,000, but they're not cheap either. They're, you know, and they're load cell and all that good stuff. So I think that's the way to go. So that's pretty much it. We will end the video. I just wanted to basically do an overview of what's good, bad. Most of the bad was with the wheel rim. Most of the good was with the wheelbase. So make of that what you will. The wheel rim is definitely an economy package. No bells and whistles on it. But and the wheelbase, I feel like it is actually all the bells and whistles you could want. It actually has the rev LEDs on the wheelbase, so if you get a wheel like the BMW wheel or like the Formula wheel, the rev LEDs actually work on both, so you have a static and a moving rev LEDs, which is actually pretty cool. So we'll end it there, and actually just to close out this video, I will show you some of the new wheel rim I got and how it works on this wheelbase. Okay, so we're going to pop this thing off. I'm actually going to turn the wheelbase off. And I'm going to do this one-handed because why would you not? And here we go. All new BMW wheel rim. And it's got the quick detach on it, the real one. One of the reasons I wanted to get this wheel. Okay, so it's on. And we will once again dim the lights and watch it do its start up here. So there you have it, and I'll turn this back on so you can kind of bask in this wheel rim here. But it's way heavier, but also it has its perks. And like I said, thumbstick over here, rotary encoder and D-pad, and it clicks. 7-way switch is what that is, and then they call it the funky switch. Analog over here with the click also. And then all the buttons and the display, which you can't see with my lighting going on, but That's just to kind of show this wheelbase can handle about any wheel they make, because this is probably the heaviest wheel they make. I don't know for certain, but we'll take a stab at it. It's probably pretty much the heaviest wheel they make. It's pretty hefty, and it does absolutely fine. So if you're looking to upgrade later with the wheel rim, or if you have the wheel rim and you're wanting to get the CSL-Elite wheelbase, it's fine. Yeah, it's not going to overheat it. It's not going to... It does kind of... You feel a little bit of... a little bit less of the sharpness of the force feedback, but nothing major. And in fact, I like it better. So, hope you liked the video. Hit the like button, subscribe. I'm out.
Gotta hit him.